so it's rubbing your head and patting your tummy. Welcome in, everybody. We're going into the Community Programming Initiative. The elections are over, so we've had a few openings. If you want to be part of it, just get a hold of us, Debbie at WJOB1230.com. Hey, we're going to talk cybersecurity and law and a whole bunch of stuff with my good friend here, Vince Mazza. We haven't seen him in a while. Vince, how you been, my friend?
Oh, doing great. You're right. It has been a little while. This pandemic has really thrown things for a loop.
You haven't aged a day, you know what I mean? Look at this thing, though. The Mark Ruffalo look is getting worse every day.
Look good.
Hey, Vince, before we bring in the guests, man, talk about what Guard Street does and what your mission in life is.
Absolutely. So Guard Street, we're a cybersecurity company, and we focus on proactively protecting businesses, organizations, and consumers from cyber attacks. And we also provide reactive services. So we take that emergency call should there be a cyber incident. So we provide the skill set for that, as well as the insurance.
And how does somebody find you on the web?
Oh, you could go to www.guardstreet.com. It's really easy. We've got our various commercial and enterprise services there, as well as our consumer ID theft protection. And you can call us at 1-800-811-9130.
All right, so Guard Street in cybersecurity, privacy, all of that kind of stuff. You have a retail side. We have a lot of small businesses here, and they're always worried about it, and they're always going to think they're going to get ripped off. So They know you, so they know they're not going to get ripped off, and if they want to guard their business, they can start right there, correct?
Absolutely. We came out this year with our cyber attack protection plan. Every business needs it. Every business in the U.S., all of your listeners need to be protected. And
obviously all the small businesses, and you're getting into an area that you don't always know. Hey, who do I contact? What's going on? Well, you know Vince Mazza, and he owns a place and he runs it, so you can start right there with Guard Street. Vince, you got somebody today. Who is it?
I do. Really great guy, Scott Brennan from Lexicon. And we wanted to, well, we're going to focus on the legal industry. With the pandemic, we've seen in the first 3 weeks since the pandemic really hit the U.S., we saw a 30% increase in cyber attacks, and a massive increase in phishing emails with 667%. You think, oh my gosh, it's hard enough to run a business, but to run a business that is under attack, and law firms are absolutely a focus of cyber attacks. It's not easy to run that type of business and be successful. So while there's a lot of things going on these days, a company can be successful, which is why I brought Scott Brennan from Lexicon. Scott's the CEO, and Lexicon is absolutely the shining star in the legal industry with their secure practice management system. You use a partner like Lexicon to really allow you to run your business successfully and grow it. And then Guard Street, of course, we help on the cyber side so you can protect that growth. So Scott's a great guy. I actually used to work with him at GE Capital. He brings an amazing business perspective that I respect, and he's definitely respected in the legal industry with his service.
Wow, Scott, what an introduction. You're going to be able to live up to that?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. No way.
Hey,
no, Vince and I go back a long way, and he's right. The pandemic changed a lot of businesses, but law firms in particular struggled. First, it's a face-to-face business, right? You want to talk to your lawyer. And then also courts around the country were either restricted or beginning to shut down. And, a lot of our customers are preparing for the future. So the ones that are continuing to invest in marketing and then practice management software like we provide, which is backed by security, that Guard Street provides, gave them a secure environment to go out and have, virtual meetings with potential clients or attend, virtual meetings with judges, but it also made sure that all of their data was secure. Because if you think about it, if you're somebody going through a divorce or you're somebody trying to buy or divest a business, you're putting a lot of private information into the hands of your attorney. And if their back office isn't secure, especially in an environment where maybe for the first time you've got your paralegals and your attorneys all working from home, you've got an exposure there that shouldn't be trifled with, right? That attorney-client privilege is really a vow that those attorneys make, and if they're allowing bad actors from outside to come in through a flaw in your security, they've just broadcast all of your personal information to whoever wanted it.
Somebody has 5 attorneys. They say, hey, you know what? I heard this guy on the radio, or I watched him on the video, and I want to see what they do. And we don't really do cybersecurity. We just have a network, and hopefully nobody breaks in, which is really hope is what a lot of people operate on. But they come to you and they say, all right, you know what? I believe your message. What happens then?
Yeah, so if they sign up with us, we are entirely redundant cloud-based. So it sounds a little nerdy, but basically it says you don't have any servers sitting on your property anymore. And then we use a very high level of encryption. So when your data moves between your laptop or your desktop up into the cloud, it is encrypted on both ends. And if that message is intercepted, in transit, it's completely useless to whoever tried to intercept it. So we provide that high level of redundancy, and then on top of it, we monitor to make sure that the cloud is secure, right? Nobody is getting into your private firm's database without you having authorized it.
All right, so how does this fit in, like right now, a lot of law firms, and I guess it's like, we're moving in different stages here in Indiana, so some law firms are bringing people back, some courts are bringing people back, but I've talked to a couple of lawyers that are like, you know what, I think we might keep this employee at home, they seem real productive, and I think this person who does my research, I don't really know if they need to be in the office. So even though maybe, let's say roughly half people are still at home, there are some law firms that have kind of seen, like Facebook and Twitter and some of these other companies, saying, you know what, over time, it might actually work out better for us if they stay at home. And now all of a sudden you have all this data in the cloud. I mean, how does that interplay with this evolving workforce?
Well, the bigger risk is you have all those people working from home and they're not using a service like Lexicon. So if you're relying on using your Microsoft 365 Office account to provide you with security, you've got more exposure than you probably are aware of.
And it's going to get worse.
Yeah, and it's going to get worse. Vince is right. So we saw more than a 200% increase in spear phishing attempts on the law firms that we service and protect during the pandemic. So that basically means somebody in my company or somebody in one of the law firms that we support got an email that urgently needed information, right? It is really important, and your managing partner needs this right away. And we educate our law firms all the time. Look for .ru email addresses, look for spelling errors, look for strange formatting. But I'll tell you what, a lot of these guys are getting more and more sophisticated every day. And so what you really need to protect yourself is a stronger automated security system, whether that's what GuardStreet does on the back end or what we do on the front end with SALT encryption to make sure that nobody can work their way into the network. Either way, as a lawyer or really in any business right now, if you're not upping your game in cybersecurity, you're probably being ripped off.
Talking to Scott Brennan, he's with Lexicon, and Vince Mazza, you know him from GuardStreet and his cybersecurity. All right, so let's nerd out for a second, because there are, it's a kind of a niche audience, but there are people that are running offices, law offices. I have, I think, 4 lawyers that are advertising now. I mean, obviously, you guys know my wife's in the legal world, and a lot of my buddies are, so they're all dealing with these questions. So on the front end is Lexicon putting the stuff in the cloud, okay, and allowing the paralegal at home that had just had a baby to, I mean, I don't mean to just generalize that, but I know a guy who has a paralegal and he wants to keep her at home and she just had a baby. So I'm like, dude, just let her work at home. I don't know how that works. All right, so they talk to you and you're running the front end. Vince, what's your role?
So we focus on everything cybersecurity. So things like making sure that the network is scanned on a regular basis, like vulnerability scans, to identify if there's open ports, as an example, because particularly, these days, hackers are running scans of the internet and trying to find companies that aren't keeping up to date with their network and finding ports open and then planting malware in there. So we focus there. We also do ethical hacking. So we'll actually go in and find if we can navigate through and break through that network or any aspects of the business, and then essentially clean that stuff up. And then on the email side of things that Scott had mentioned, look, email at the end of the day is 95% of the hacks originate through that means. And so having a secure email service is key. You can't expect that, as Scott was mentioning, the phishing emails are becoming extremely difficult to detect. And you can't turn employees into human phishing detectors. So we run an artificial intelligence process to essentially make sure that bad guys who send those phishing emails aren't getting data about who opened it, who the email was forwarded to, and basically do reconnaissance in the organization. And then we also provide an artificial intelligence-based warning that's specific to the email. So if the person in accounting, say, receives an email from the senior partner that says, hey, could you wire $20,000 by 3 o'clock to this new vendor that we had? Here's their routing number and account number. Okay, well, the person in accounting that's a senior partner. I've got to make this happen. But our email alert will say, hey, this is the first time that this email account has ever sent you an email. Are you sure you want to proceed? And typically these emails are so good, they're tough to detect. Our intelligence will detect it. So those are some of the things that we do in this environment.
Yeah, we're talking to Vince.
A lot of those emails out. So before they even get to the end user, if it is relatively easy to detect, if it's got a bunch of errors, if it's got a bunch of weird looking attachments, it gets screened out and gets thrown into basically a sandbox that the technology group can look at, verify whether they're safe or not, and blow them up without them ever reaching somebody's inbox.
Talking to Scott Brennan with Lexicon and Vince Mazza with Guard Street. If you have any questions specific to law firms and the virtualization or the internetalization of law firms, it's happening right now. I can guarantee you that. All right, so let's think. Vince, you brought up a bad guy. All right, so bad guy's looking at a law firm, 20 lawyers, regional thing. And they got maybe based in Maryville, and they got an office in South Bend, and they got one in Lafayette. But they're based in Maryville, 20 lawyers there, 3 in South Bend, 5 in Lafayette. Lots of information going back and forth from these places all day long. It's an open communication. A lot of people are at home now, so that's increased. You're the bad guy, Scott, and you're looking at this law firm. What are you looking to do to them?
I want to suck all of their information on every one of their clients out, because it is likely I'll get social security information, mother's maiden name, every address that they've lived at, right? Any property they're looking at buying or selling, who all of their employers have ever been. And I can take that information and I can use that to open second mortgages or sell it to other people who want to, use it for probably a similar purpose.
Or corporate espionage.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you just want to know who they're, I guess that's how Vince and I think. I wonder who their clients are. But anyways, yeah. So
Well, if you think about it, a bad guy can attack companies and spend all sorts of time navigating through the information that they hopefully can get access to in a business. It'll take them a lot of time. Whereas attacking a law firm, you've got a treasure trove right there, and you can island hop within a single law firm and have the most important information stored on clients in a single spot. That's why they're so valuable to bad guys.
Yeah. And so what we do and why, why Lexicon is important is we create a closed environment. So all of the messaging between attorneys and paralegals, no matter where they are on earth, all sits within the Lexicon environment, that you don't have to email your colleagues anymore. If you want to collaborate on a case or a matter, you can do that within the software. You can send notes to each other within that matter. So nothing ever has to leave that Lexicon environment. So it's never exposed to the outside world.
speaking of exposure, and I want to get to the attitude of longtime law firms with the partner who's been there for 40 years and he doesn't trust anything other than putting it in a ledger. Well, let's go to that. Let's go to that right now. You know what? Let's do this. All right, a law firm, they get hacked by the bad guy. They know all about liability. They know all about, is there systemic risk and so forth. What is the law firm's exposure for not perhaps having adequate cybersecurity?
It's the same exposure as really any other business would have, but they're obligated to protect that information the same way your bank is obligated to protect your information. On top of the legal ramifications, the real most damaging is likely going to be the bad PR they suffer, right? So if I ran a firm and it was hacked and I had 5 high-profile clients splashed across the radio and the internet that all of their information was now available, my law firm may not exist in a week or two.
He is Scott Brennan. If you got any questions about it, you also have Vince Mazza. Anything specific to cybersecurity? Well, in the last 10 minutes here, I'll take the questions. I know you guys were calling before and I didn't answer. Vince, let's do a parallel here because I've been telling folks I'm taking off a little bit of time next week. During the break here and the pandemic, I've been wanting to virtualize my entire media company, and I haven't trusted anybody, and I finally iHeartRadio.com, they came out and they're sharing their software, and I plan on virtualizing my entire operation so that anybody anytime could go on from their house. They can play their different songs or do their shows from their phone in a park, and it's all held just exactly like Scott talked about. And it's going to be not on any of these computers. All the stuff that we do on computers now is going to be there. And we're taking our financial records and we're putting all that in the cloud too. So it's made for radio stations and TV stations. Okay, we're doing that, and it took a long time. And I got a guy in the industry, he's like, dude, why are you still doing this on a computer? You need to virtualize it. You need to virtualize it. And now that I'm messing with it, I can see, I don't know, I got to say at least a 50% efficiency on us being able to work from everywhere. I could see the security of it. I could see right now that people could bust in probably and get some of my stuff. How do you convince somebody that's been doing it a certain way for 30, 40 years that now's the time to take it into the cloud? Scott, you first.
Yeah, so we sell more than just the security aspect. So we also sell, do you want to grow your firm and make more money, right? And if you do, those efficiencies that you just talked about, Jim, I'm 50% more efficient. That's true in law. It's true in lots of industries, but it's definitely true in the law. And so we can help them, bring their processes to be far more productive. They can do more work per hour, bill more in a day as a result of having just better processes as a function of digitizing what they do. That doesn't also include better marketing and then any of the other services that we might be able to do for them. We take phone calls for attorneys, right? So we can run your ads, and then we take those phone calls we'll schedule that initial consult with your attorney, knowing what paperwork needs to be brought in, what information do they need in advance. Remind the customer before they show up at the firm, don't forget your appointment's at 10 a.m. tomorrow. You need to bring these things with you. So beyond the productivity of moving to a digital environment, we offer lots of other benefits that streamline a firm's operation and just helps them get to productivity and, more importantly, profitability. So we sell on that.
Vince, you've been here, you know this game here in Northwest Indiana, a lot of long-standing businesses. To get to the core of accepting that technology, you have this conversation with business owners all the time. What clicks?
Well, one of the things that clicks is the risk of not doing it. I mean, right now, first of all, to do it and not waste, you mentioned it's taking you a lot of time and effort to get this done. Using strategic partners definitely speeds that up so you can focus on what you do best. And that's what Lexicon does. That's what Guard Street does. We focus on the cyber side of things. What gets a company over the hump is when you look at things in an intellectually honest way and say, wow, the average cyber attack is going to cost me $200,000, and I've got a 47% chance of being hit this year. More actually now since the pandemic. That starts to, you look at things a bit differently because you want to protect your nest egg long term. And you also want to do what you love as an entrepreneur, as a small business person. One thing that I saw on Scott's website, just because I'm a big fan of setting up partnerships where parties are able to specialize. And as a business owner, let's take the attorney example is if being an attorney has become the smallest part of your job, talk to Lexicon. So if suddenly you're getting into the security and really have your knee deep in all the operational stuff, you're not being an attorney anymore. You're just running the business and you're probably not good at it because you don't specialize there. So the key is to work with strategic partners to help you get there.
Got a lawyer texting me. What about VPNs?
Oh gosh. Okay. So I didn't answer the second part. So if you're bringing things remote, you've got to set up either a VPN or SD-WAN so that your communication process is very secure. That's second on my list. The first thing on the list is all that data. Are you backing it up locally as well as in the cloud? That is absolutely critical. Are your, whatever business, are you scanning the network? It's a low cost thing to do. You don't have to spend a lot of money to protect your business. Are you scanning and identifying those open ports that we were talking about earlier to avoid, opportunities to drop malware, ransomware, and so forth. And really whether you're a one-man operation, a one-man army, or you've got 5 people working at home or 500, you've got to set up the right policies to be accessing your information, like multi-factor authentication to log in. Just as a rule of thumb, multi-factor everything you can, personally and in your business.
Yeah, every office worker hates that you just said that.
No, I know.
But it's a necessary evil. I go over here to Purdue and talking to a counselor or whatever, and they're multi-factoring in and out of different things. And sometimes the language veers in a direction that, but ultimately all that data is safe. We're talking to Scott Brennan of Lexicon and to Vince Mazza of Guard Street. All right, to finish up here, Scott, give us a projection of the law firm of 2 to 4 years from now.
Yeah, I do think you'll see law firms being much more virtual. I think that things like pretrial hearings are likely to remain in a digital or virtual environment for far longer. Regular court, you're going to trial, you'll probably go back, and most parts of the country will regularly hold trial in person. But I think that the idea of Zoom discovery going away, I'm not really buying that. I think that Zoom discovery is likely to be around for a while. Yeah, and I do think you're going to continue to see a lot of cyber attacks on law firms. I think you're going to start seeing some pretty high-profile attacks. Not a lot of firms have upgraded to something like a Lexicon that really protects them and protects their interests, holistically. And these bad apples, they're figuring it out. And I think you're going to start to read about more high-profile hacks of law firms.
Any lawyer, judge, whatever, administrator, law administrator, how do they're like, all right, you got me hooked. I at least want to know more. How do they know more about you?
Just lexiconservices.com. The website will walk you through high level what the service is and the software look like. And we'll happily arrange to have somebody call them and walk them through a demo over a Zoom or a WebEx virtually.
And Vince, final comments.
With all the remote workforce activity that's happened over the last couple of months, there is everything I'm reading and seeing is predicting we've had a pandemic, a health pandemic. There's a cybersecurity pandemic forthcoming in the next couple few months. It's going to go ballistic, and the reason is because companies haven't prepared to be a remote workforce. You quickly got out, and you didn't set up the appropriate cybersecurity. That's my prediction, and that's pretty consistent with what the industry is seeing. So start taking the steps now to protect your business.
All right, guys, learned a lot there. I didn't make one lawyer joke, which is odd, and people are going to think that I'm off my game. But this is sponsored by Guard Street. And if you're a law firm, start with Lexicon. And if you're a business or a government or whatever, start with Guard Street, or a person, and start thinking about your cybersecurity. Thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
All right, guys, and that will be, I'm going to end their Zoom right there. And if you want to see that again, share it around. A lot of good kind of niche information for law firms and courts and governments. Kind of got to deal with, wow, what if he started talking about pretrial hearings. Not every hearing has to have a bunch of people come into the court when you're just going to say, hey, like basically sometimes set up another hearing. Can we do that remotely? Yes, and you can. And I know it's happening quite a bit right now. All right, that'll end right there. And we'll have St. Catherine Hospital up next.